Hello, my name is Sophie and I'm going to present to you my research, which is about physical and emotional states. In my minor research, I have been animated by searching a method to generate movement material from the inner experience of the performers. Previously, I created some works based on the exploration of the inner imagination and the emotion of the performers, but I wasn't aware of it. And now I am capable to articulate my practice, so I decided to test it by studying the different ways to stimulate performers to produce movement through emotional and physical tasks. Then the goal of this task is to lead the dancer to create a state. Working with state. I'm interested to search for emotional experience provoked in people. That's why I like to work with state, because state is a physical expression of an intention. The intention can be physical or emotional. I like this quote of Max Stewart, which said that a state emerges when you are no longer thinking in technical terms about what you are doing. And in the previous work I made, I realized that working with states can often lead to cliché and stereotype, and which I kind of find problematic. So in order to avoid them, I had to define in my research what is the difference between a cliché and the exploration of a real feeling that I can here call a prototype. So I define a cliché by like this. So cliché is already completely defined before one employs it. Whereas a prototype is a structure based upon limited knowledge from which further investigation and development can take place. So I use this form of prototype in my research. So we can wonder, why is it interesting to work with state as a maker? And which really struck me is mainly that states engage the audience. Because states create a language which, through the body of the performer, create a kinesthetic empathy to the audience. Because the audience catches directly the emotional intention from the performer's body. So I'm searching for a form of immediacy and authenticity between the dancers and the audience. So by watching states, the audience has space for interpretation and imagination. They can create their own meaning of what they see. And this can lead to irrational and illogical interpretation. In order to do my research, I used a method and different tools. First of all, I worked with Nana, Leah, Tina, Elliot, and Petra, but thanks a lot for being with me. They are students from first and second year, and I choose to work with them because of their ability to dig into emotional practices. I decided also to step outside of my practice in order to have more distance and to see the outcome and to understand the outcome of what they were doing. And also I decided to step outside to block their habits or that they could have. I recorded every session and then I analyzed it later. So first we work with improvisation. So for me, the best way to find authenticity and to explore the different facets of a state is to use improvisation. I learned from João da Silva, which is here, and from my experience that when we improvise, we have knowledge, we know things. And we know things like from our past, our memories, or imagination, everything that can surround us, we can use it in improvisation. So improvisation is a way to work towards finding material that will be structured or set in a final piece. The second tool I use is course. So in order to create a desire, a necessity for the performers to move, I need to create condition. In my experience of improvising, it's much easier to take decision when your range of choice is shortened. So that's why I decided to set a strong structure for the performers. And so I can define the score by a set of instruction, choreographic or not. So a score is a tool for information, image and inspiration. This is a quote from Jonathan Burroughs, who says that a score is a conscious way to distance you from the thing you are making or doing. It can mediate between the maker and the work, also between the maker and the performer. In my research, I created two kinds of scores. An emotional score, which is a score in which the inspiration comes from an emotion, a feeling expressed through the body. And physical score, which gives physical information, like it deals more with anatomical images, for example, or we will see later separation of body parts. I have to say it was really lovely for me to write scores. I really enjoyed it. And I read these scores to the dancer after. I decided to show you three of them. The two first one, peeling and traveling through shifting words, are emotional score. The last one, separation of body parts, is a physical score. So peeling. Peeling is based on a short story with two characters that have to deal with a complex situation. The principle is to find emotions linked to the story and to embody them. And I divided the story, the process in 3 steps. I need to say also that I wrote this score because I'm interested by searching how to abstract narrative and explicit physical material. The dancers were Nana and Elliot. The first step is the dancer act the story with words and developed it.
I'm pretty sure it's my right. It looks like it would be so much easier if you missed the took my right and painted.
Stop! I don't have paint. And I never steal anything. I never stole anything. I never stole
You
anything.
can go and try to paint and paint it. I mean, you just paint it and then...
10 years ago, I tried to steal a car, in this magazine, and then I cried all day. Do you think you think humanity is so bad? No, I didn't steal your bike. I swear.
So here we can see the result in this first step is that dancers fall easily into a representation. Many words were repeated and the plot of the story didn't amplify. And language prevents the dancer from developing the story. And I think this point is important because oral language tends in this exercise to narrow and limit the possibility of development of the plot. There's a quotation from Bataille that I like, which says, language enables communication, but at the same time constructs a system of norm and rule by which to live. So I would like to keep this system of communication, but I want to remove the logical frame of the text. So I asked the dancer to do the same, but instead of using English, they had to use gibberish. With the use of gibberish. The volume of the voice is louder and the action were more spontaneous, but physically dancers were still using a familiar gesture close to the representation of emotion, for example hands on hips, which represent anger. And so unconsciously the body is more involved in order to support the weakened language system, because gibberish keeps the intention but blurs the communication, so the body has to act more. So always in my inquiry of getting away of the representation, I asked the dancer to only keep the emotional feeling, but to express it only through the body. So in this last step, we could see that there were no narration anymore, but dancers just keep the emotion as a source of movement. The gestures were not familiar, but expressive. By expressive, I mean a gesture that expresses an inner state, an emotion, or a desire. And the material was more abstract rather than representational, and the only medium of communication which stays the body. Then I decided to do a second score, which is called Traveling Through Shifting Words. This is a score made by Meg Stewart, and I borrowed the structure and I filled it with my own imagination. So in this score, dancers move from one imaginary space to another. In order to embody the states proposed, dancers have to provoke an authentic response from their body by imaginative means. I will not tell you what I told to the dancer, I will tell you later. So here we could see Leah, Petra and Elliot. So well, I will keep talking while you can watch. Here I told them you have a memory of 3 seconds. It was lovely to do, and like this score has a lot of different statements. So I told them a lot of things, and like I think it lasts 1 hour. We did a small break in between, but every state is explored for at least 5 minutes. So I told them like this scores, but like this sentence, but I also told them, for example, you are a mermaid, half fish, half human, or your body is magnetic, or you are in an ocean of candy, or your organs are exploding inside you. So it was really nice to watch, and I guess maybe to do. And in this exercise, the use of imagination and memory is needed to activate the process of creative transformation. Yeah. So it was really interesting because it was really fruitful. There was a lot of material produced that has potential to be choreographed for stage. And I also remember that there was a lot of somehow literal improvisation because I gave like too much information in my sentences. For example, with the sentence, you smell very bad, you're ashamed, they often fall into cliché and stereotype of what this sentence can bring. And when I gave more abstract or less information, it was much more interesting. For example, when I told them, you see yourself everywhere, or you are manipulated by invisible forces. And then I will show you a last score, which is separation of body parts. Here I gave physical information to the dancer about different body parts. Each single part of the body have to speak for the entire being. I gave anatomical, poetical, and metaphorical images. I will tell you in advance what I told them to do. So here we can see Tina, Elliot, and Petra. And I told them first to only move from the pelvis. Then I told them to have an angry conversation between their right shoulder and left feet. And then I told them to have a magnetic spine. the task to move. And I could see that poetical and metaphorical images were working much more than anatomical, because through poetic and metaphor images, I could see and feel a certain fire or desire to move from the dancer, and also their proposition were like going in much wider way also. So this score and the score just before were really interesting for me, because they propose a flow of proposition that the dancer can dig into without stop. Here I'm gonna conclude and analyze the work I did. So I can say that working with score was really fruitful for me, because it helped me to shape my thoughts, and also it gave me a base that I can work with the dancer and develop with them later. So score became the foundation of my creative process. And more practically, I've learned that it's not a good method to start from a theatrical scene, because working with text also implies that it's difficult to translate the intention of the mind into the physical embodiment. And I've learned that the most interesting proposition I got happened when I gave poetical abstract images and metaphors. Theoretically speaking, I could notice that the movement created from the inner world of the performer, his intimacy, are not directly readable by the audience. But paradoxically, it attracts the audience because it creates a mystery, and it multiplies the presence of the performer. And third, we could feel the inner world of the performer, which is bubbling. So this part of the research was to find a method to create emotional and physical state. The next step of my research is to compose with state, that I will do in my next piece with Elliot. Thank you very much.